Hi, my name is Andy Commons. I'm doing this presentation to tell you guys about the podcast that I've been working on for this IT project with my good buddies, Connor and Spencer. We spent a lot of time on it. We spent months figuring out what we want to talk about, what we want to include, how we want it to work, just general stuff like that. And I'm here to tell you a bit about that, where we got the idea, what we've done to research for it, how we've prepared it, and some problems we had along the way. I'm doing this in my car pretty late at night, about 3 days before it's due, because this is the only free time I'll have until it's due. So I hope it turns. So the idea to start a podcast, I've actually had this idea for a while, and I was going to do it last year for a Genius Hour project very similar to this, but we never ended up having to turn one in. So I guess I've had an extra year to really get this whole thing together, and it really shows in the final product, I think, the amount of time that we've had to really consider it. It started off, Mr. Mosley introduced the idea of a Genius Hour project to us at the start of the semester, somewhere around there, maybe a couple weeks in, and he said you could do a few things. You could do 3D printing, you could make a video, you could do stuff with drones, or you could do a podcast. And me being as naturally hilarious and charismatic as I am, I decided that a podcast would be the best option. And who would be the best people to include? Gabe Smakula and Connor Andrews. Unfortunately, Gabe Smakula was not available, so we got Spencer Hanna. Now, for the first few weeks, this project was sort of in a bit of a limbo stage. We didn't really know exactly what we wanted to do. We knew we wanted to make a podcast. We wanted it to sort of be comedy-centric, but we didn't know, the main topics that we wanted to focus on. We sort of flipped-flopped between a lot of things. We started, maybe we could do conspiracy theory stuff. Maybe we could do technology-related stuff like that. We landed on a firm, grounded in reality, sort of technology-based podcast. And if we include a bit of humor, maybe a bit of outlandish theories we have regarding technology, that's fine. That just makes it more interesting to the listener, and that's ultimately what we ended up doing. And that took us about a month and a half to figure out. Now, going into some research we did before we started the podcast, there's some stuff you could do, like researching what equipment you want to have, like what microphones would be good to use, what software we want to use to record it, what software we use to actually talk to each other over online, because getting 3 people in the same room at the same time for a project is nearly impossible, as we found out. So we started our research by just really looking at podcasts, seeing which ones that we wanted to be like, where our inspiration would come from. We looked at stuff like the Joe Rogan podcast and nothing else. Then one of the main things that we wanted to do was research what audio equipment that we should be using, what software. Now, as it turns out, the audio equipment that we would have to be using, it's the microphones that came on the laptops and computers that we already had at our houses, because we have a combined total of $0 to spend on this project. Same thing applied to the software, but luckily we used Open Broadcasting software. It's free and it's good. Yeah, pretty much that's all the stuff we had to do. We did a bit of editing it together and post-production, trying to make it more clean, sort of cut for time a bit, but that's not too complex. You could do that for free pretty easily. So yeah, basically we had the idea for the podcast. We did a bit of research into what we had to do. Just the other day we filmed it. We got onto Discord. We all started recording. There were a bit of technical difficulties with a bit of echo and the audio, some stuff not coming in. We fixed those problems right up, and I think the final product really shows how much work and thought we put into it, and really how much comedic chemistry we have as a whole. There's really not a whole lot of awkward silences, not a lot of pauses where we don't know what to say, we don't know how to continue the conversation, we don't really know where it's going. Not really, sort of nothing like that at all happened in the final product. It was basically just perfect, like we were 3 professionals who have been doing this for years, getting together, making a podcast. I think it turned out really well. And listen, if you don't believe me, then just go to these fantastic testimonials from people who have watched the podcast, and they have some things to say about it. We'll play those now.
Yeah.
The text.
I'm starting?
Yeah.
Okay.
The text files pod. Come on. Say it.
The text files.
Podcast.
Podcast.
Is my favorite.
Do you want me to say it?
Favorite.
The Text Files podcast is my favorite podcast ever.
See, that's how you do it.
The MLM podcast is my favorite.
No, that's not what I said. That's do the thing I said. Do the thing. Hey.
Textile?
Hey.
Is it
I
textile?
listen, if you want to get reelected, you'll stay out of this.
You can't get reelected.
Exactly.
No, I'm coming back every single year.
Come on, say it.
Textile?
The text files.
Text files.
Textile is a
Text
word. The text file. It's like the X Files.
Why would it go? That's so boring.
Say you like. I'm up here.
Yeah, what a weird. Okay, I'll do whatever. The Text Files podcast is my favorite podcast.
Yeah, we got it. This podcast is my favorite
And give a
podcast.
thumbs up like I did.
And then thumbs up.
The Text Files podcast is my favorite podcast.
Yeah, hey, we talk.
I got you on that
and
one,
it's especially good that he's giving a good review because we don't even talk about food.
Oh, I like
Spider-Man.
I like two things more than anything in the world:
Yep,
Paw Patrol, the Clifford movie, and whatever this podcast is.
that's
The
three.
Text
That's
podcast.
3 things.
Are you going to endorse this or not?
Okay, go ahead.
What's the name again? I already forgot.
It's the text file. You know the name. You're doing a bit.
Text Files.
He's doing a bit.
No, I'm not. I actually forgot.
Say it though. You just got it.
I endorse the Text Files podcast.
He's doing a voice.
I endorse the Text Files podcast.
There we go.
The Text Files podcast is my favorite. It's my
Violence.
favorite podcast.
There we go. Ha 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 ha. Well said, you guys. So now, what we're gonna do is we told our story. I'm not reading from a rubric, but we told our story. We explained how we got here. We gave you some testimonials. That was creativity. Those were the points for creativity. Mark those down. That was creative what we did that segment. So now what we have to do is explain some of the struggles we had while recording the podcast. And I think really the main struggle that we had was trying to figure out a time where we could do it, because we spent about 2 months not figuring out anything. We just we sat there and we were like, yeah, we're doing a podcast, we're talking about technology, we'll bring up goblins a couple times, it's a good idea, we're smart, we're geniuses, we're hilarious, that's all we need. But as it turns out, it's hard to plan something when people have jobs, or they're busy, or they're pretending that they're busy. I wouldn't do that, but some people would. We found a day. There was about 3 weeks where we were trying to figure out days, and really nothing was working, but we got one done. I believe it was yesterday. We filmed it and it turned out great. We're turning it in on time, so we really got that problem solved. As for other problems that I think we really had, like I said, there were some technical difficulties at the start when we were filming, but we got that knocked out in a few minutes. Possibly you could describe one of the technical difficulties, well, just difficulties in general, would be trying to find good topics to talk about, because as it is right now, nothing interesting is happening, and it's all just sort of this gray blur of nonsense and going through the motions for about 90% of people. But we found some cool tech-related stuff to talk about, and yeah, that's it. And now that I've explained the problems I had, and now we're going to go to the other guys and see what problems, they thought arose and how they overcame those. That's the 25% for that. Please, God, give us an A. I'll take a B, please. All right, that's Andy signing off. We'll see what everyone else has to say in a second.
Hello, my name is Connor. I'm on behalf of the Text Files podcast. I'm here to discuss one thing that I found difficult in the making of this podcast. I'd say the most difficult thing was finding topics for a podcast that were both interesting enough to keep talking about and relating to tech enough for it to be part of the Text Files. Thank you.
Wow, I couldn't agree more. All right, I guess that sort of wraps it up for this segment. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I hope you listen to this presentation with open ears, open minds. You want to check out our podcast. It's really good. I think you should watch it because no one else is funnier and no one else has more insight than high schoolers in an IT class who put this together in a couple hours at most. So yeah, that's the presentation. That's the podcast. I hope you guys liked it. If you do end up listening to it, give us some feedback, help us improve in the future. We'll probably never do an episode again, but you know what? It's fine, because we did one, and the most important thing here is that Mr. Mosley should give us an A, at least a B, but we would preferably an A. Please. All right, that's Andy Commons of the Text Files podcast signing off. Have a great day.